Hey everybody, Justin here, and welcome to another Deck Tech. Today I am going to present to you guys an Ashcan Pete deck, which is actually going to be featured on a gameplay coming up in the channel in the next few weeks. So this was a two-handed Ashcan Pete deck that focused on getting clues, so the deck is obviously going to be built more around getting clues. The nice thing about Ashcan Pete is that with Duke the dog, Ashcan can get whatever job is needed done in the moment, and he's really good at being versatile. So this deck was designed to get clues, but if you need to do other things, you can. I can say that probably in 3-player, this deck will morph more into a flex type role. However, in 2 players, this deck has done really well, and I'm excited to share it with you. So, Ashcan Pete is mad at Duke the dog, and that dog is not getting treats as commonly as he used to. So now, move over Duke, man's new best friend is in town, and that man is Jacob Morrison. In this deck, Ashcan acts primarily as a clover and uses Jacob Morrison to never fail tests. So Jacob Morrison, we're going to get to that card in detail in the near future, but this deck is built around Jacob Morrison. So I'll show you guys the packs that are needed for this deck, both the level 0 and then also the 35 experienced version that you can find in the description of this video. So as you can see, we need the core set, revised core. The little stars there are to show that in both the Essex County and Harvey Walters, what you need from those decks are also in the core set or the revised core. Dunwich Legacy, Path to Carcosa, Phantom of Truth, which I know is a particularly hard to find pack, or at least it was recently. So once again, if you don't have these cards, you can try to find suitable replacements for them. The only problem is I am not 100% confident, but I believe, let me just open up ARKHAM DB while I'm talking. Let's look at Resourceful, because I think that is the one. No, it's from the Path to Carcosa. All right. It's probably Madame Lebranche, which is just in the, sorry, I did a space. I should know better to do a space. Madame Lebranche, who is just in the, that's a Phantom of Truth. That's just in the level 0 deck, and that could be pretty much any ally. So that is nice to, that you can, like, modify that if you don't have Phantom of Truth. Depths of Yoth, Circle Undone, 1,000 Shapes of Horror, Dark Side of the Moon, Point of No Return, Horror in High Gear, Into the Maelstrom, Edge of the Earth, and the Stella Clark and the Harvey Walters Investigator decks. The most important piece of this deck, besides obviously Ashcan Pete, is Jacob Morrison, who is in Into the Maelstrom for the Innsmouth Conspiracy, and he is kind of like, obviously not a necessary piece of the deck, but he is kind of like the whole point of the deck. As you can see here, we have the level 0 version. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the cards here. Moonstone and Madame Lebranche are both placeholders. I really like Madame Lebranche as a level 0 ally, but as I said, this could be pretty much any other level 0 ally that you find interesting. It could even be another card that you eventually side out when we bring Jacob Morrison in. My philosophy for deck building, though, is if I'm going to upgrade something into a slot, I usually find something that's in that slot as my starting. The question is Moonstone better than Lucky Rabbit's Foot? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I wanted to try it out, so that's why I put it in this level 0 deck. So you can see we have Magnifying Glass, which helps you boost up Duke, Old Keyring, which helps Ashcan Pete get clues, but we're going to talk about more of these cards in detail, and I'll give you guys a quick look at the upgraded deck before we start looking at cards. So as you can see, going through the two, Madame Lebranche is gone for Jacob. The Moonstones turn into Precious Mementos, which are really nice. They are very nice. And then we have just some other traditional red upgrades. This is an Ice Pick and Scavenging. We'll talk about all those cards. And then we'll come back to this deck list and see what else we think of it. One thing before we get going, if you don't know how Ashcan Pete works, let me talk about his ability right now. So he begins in the game with Duke in play. So Duke is a 2/3 asset. He's an ally that does not take up an ally slot because the deck would be pretty bad if he did. He has an action, Exhaust, Fight. You attack with a base skill of 4 and this attack deals +1 damage. And then you can also exhaust Duke and investigate. You investigate with a base skill of 4. You may move to connect in location immediately before investigating this effect. So this is what I was talking about, how Duke is very versatile, and Ashcan Pete rather is very versatile. And Ashcan Pete also has the ability to discard a card from your hand, ready an asset you control, limit once per round. This is very important when we get to Jacob Morrison, which we're going to get to in a second. Racked by Nightmares over here, this is our personal weakness. Exhaust all assets you control. You cannot ready them, and 2 actions, discard it. It's not terrible. It's actually pretty soft. It can be a bit annoying when it shows up, but because this deck is built primarily around Clooving, you are dictating the pace of the game. You do not need to worry too much about monsters, so if Racked by Nightmares comes up, you can take the time to discard it without having to worry too much about that. Let's get into some of the notable cards in this deck, shall we? Jacob Morrison. So Jacob Morrison acts as an emergency lucky every turn. He does not ready during the upkeep phase, so I'm just reading the text on him. When you would fail a skill test, exhaust Jacob Morrison, you get +2 skill value for that test. After a blessed token is revealed during the Chaos Bag during a skill test you're performing, ready Jacob Morrison. So, as I said, he acts as an emergency lucky every turn, but what's even better is that we don't need to rely on drawing blessed tokens to ready him. Instead, after using him, we use Ashcan's ability to ready him. If you don't need to use Jacob, you can use Ashcan's ability on Duke instead. And then the only consideration for Jacob is that you want cards on standby to ready him as needed. Luckily, we have some options with that. But first, before I move on, let me talk a bit about Jacob. So Jacob's really strong. A lucky every turn is really good because you basically are just sitting on an endless lucky and you don't need to jump through any hoops to ready him. You can just use Ashcan's ability to stand Jacob Morrison up. So with my play pattern for this one, I kept Jacob always. So if I ever used him for my turn, he was my priority. If I already used Duke and I only had 1 action left, I consider standing Duke up because I might as well spend Duke for my last action, right? However, there's also some tricks that you don't need to use Duke all the time in this deck, which I'm also going to get to, but your goal is to use Jacob Morrison as much as possible. So anytime you would fail, how about you don't fail? That seems pretty sick. And it's important to keep him always active. So he takes priority for your ability. He just does. As I said, the exception for is when it's maybe you're going into your last action, you just need to investigate. You want to use your ability every turn because that just makes more... Your character is better if you use their ability every turn. Don't pretend your character's text box is blank. If you can take advantage of it as much as possible, that is sick. So, Jacob's weakness in the Ashcan Pete deck is that you need cards to ready him. However, Glimmer of Hope is fantastic. So Glimmer of Hope is myriad, so there's 3 in your deck. Can only be played from your discard pile, and add all copies of a Glimmer of Hope from your discard pile into your hand. A Glimmer of Hope is one of the best cards for a discard-focused deck. For 1 action, you return all copies of a Glimmer of Hope to your hand, and this means nearly endless Jacob uses. And as I just said, nearly endless Jacob uses means nearly endless amounts of luckies. As I was playing this deck, I would never fail unless I wanted to. So when you're probably wondering, when do I grab Glimmer of Hope? Do I wait until I have all 3? Obviously, getting all 3 back in 1 action feels like chef's kiss. However, it still feels great when you can just grab 2 of them back when you have the action for it. And that action will pop up because even just 2 extra uses of either Duke or Jacob is a good time. A small scavenging package exists in this deck, and the goal of scavenging is to grab back any ice picks that you've used to expedite your clue gathering. So because Duke doesn't grab more clues, he just compresses movement, you're not exactly going to be like doing a seeker level amount of clues. Ice pick can help you with that when you're at the points where you need it, but it gets rid of itself, so you want to plan back. One thing to note is that it actually is surprisingly difficult to succeed by 2 or more with scavenging, I've noticed. But when it happens, it does feel nice. So I recommend using your ice picks only in the moments you need them, or if you have another plan to get them back. Old Keyring is another item that you can get back with scavenging. It's not as good as ice pick, however it's mostly here for consistency in your opening mulligan. As I always say, my focus on deck building is that consistency is key. I want to be able to start getting things even if I'm not using Duke on my first turn. Old Keyring also has that trick where you on a 2-shroud location, you can investigate with Pete, because Duke can't use the Old Keyring. He's a dog. He doesn't have thumbs. So you can do that to just grab clues from a 2-shroud location. The precious mementos are great accessories to have because they mean you never die. Of course, you can still die with them, but the game has to work a lot harder to kill you. Scavenging also allows us to use precious mementos as unexpected courages, and then we can scavenge them back into our hand to play or commit again. I got a lot more experience in this deck, and I did maybe a bit too early upgrade into the scavenging level 2s, but I'll tell you what, playing one of these for free from your discard pile, free action, it still costs 3 money, is super nice. You're like, I think I might be amazing when it happens. These cards are fantastic. They're very expensive XP-wise, so they could be something else, but I like them in this deck a lot because what's better than not failing? Not failing and also not dying. Oh my god, we went too far. 1 second. You didn't see anything. You didn't accidentally strip back reality and like step into the Matrix. Don't worry about that. We're back into this normal Ashcan Pete video. You did not see anything strange. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyways, Look What I Found 2 is an incredibly strong card. In this deck, I often found myself using it on my Ashcan Pete investigations after using Duke. So my turn process was pretty simple. I'd use Duke to grab a clue, and then I'd investigate with Pete. And on standard difficulty, the most common modifier is -2-ish, around there. Hey, 3 or less, 2 minus 2 is 0. Even 2 minus 3 is 1. Like, it's gonna probably get you to, like, commonly, a 3-shroud location, you can grab the clues from this. If you're feeling particularly spicy, which I was when I was playing this, you can even use Jacob Morrison to bump you up a bit more. So I would actually, like, investigate a 4-shroud location, get a -2. I would use Jacob to put myself to 2, and then I would use Look What I Found to grab clues from my location. This card, I think, is the best target for Resourceful in the deck. Mostly just because, like, Lucky 3 obviously strong, but Jacob is our Luckies. He is the reason we don't fail. Luckies are very good, but if you have a Resourceful and you can grab a Look What I Found, I think it's worth it. Last thing here is an Unrelenting. This is the last, like, notable card for me in this deck. After the core cards were added to this deck, I added 2 copies of Unrelenting. Even though we aren't abusing this card in a way that Silas or Amanda can abuse it, 2 cards drawn are still 2 cards more than you had before. So this also works really well with Jacob because you're less likely to fail because you have Jacob on standby. And once again, like, the hardest part of this deck is ensuring that you have cards for Jacob to ready him. You're not going to be readying Jacob every turn because you're not aiming to fail a test every turn. Our goal is to pass tests. However, there will be times when you're going to be playing cards from your hand and you need to fill it up. Unrelenting is very good at that. It does really technically only net a single card, but that's still card positive, right? I personally prefer Unrelenting to something like Take Card because I would rather pass a test and draw cards than fail a test and draw cards. And also because in this deck we're going to be passing tests more often than we are failing tests. Like, trust me, this deck is like, you aren't worried. You control and you dictate when you want to pass and fail. You have that much power. Really fun deck, and I really like it. So, as you can see here, we talked about the majority of our assets. Relic Hunter is also here because, you know, we want to have both Precious Mementos in play. If we have both Precious Mementos in play, we definitely never die. Look What I Found 2 is a Glimmer of Hope, very important. Deny Existence, because we have 5 splash cards, and I think Deny Existence is pretty sick. I like it more than a Warder Protection because, honestly, like, I'm not too worried about cards like Ancient Evils. That's just me. Like, this could be a Warder Protection if you are worried about Ancient Evils, but I think Deny Existence is just, like, a better bang for your buck because it also stops enemy attacks, so you can play a bit more aggressively than you would have otherwise. I just think Deny Existence is really sick. Lucky 3 is also really awesome. 2 copies of Winging It because they help with Ashcan Pete in combination with Jacob, and also Look What I Found. In addition, Winging It is great discard fodder to use Ashcan's ability. For our skills, we have 2 times deductions because we are the Cloovers. This could become Vicious Blows if you want to fight. It also, in theory, could become a Vicious Blow and a deduction if you are like being a true flex. We have a 1 up Perception, 2 Resourcefuls, 2 Unexpected Courage, and 2 Unrelentings. This is the deck. I stand by this deck. This deck is really good. It's like, as I said, this is going to be featured on an upcoming custom campaign playthrough, and it's just been exceeding my expectations. It's very strong, very tight, and you can get going with very little. Even a bad mulligan, it's fine. It's like you'll get there, because Duke is also just so good. Like, even if nothing else is in play, you can use your Winging It's and your Glimmer of Hopes to use Duke every turn, and Duke is just still very good. But luckily, everything else, once you start rolling out and getting them there, you're gonna start. It's gonna put up. I think this deck's really good, and I hope you watch the series that it's coming out on. And if you want to look more into these decks, I do have the deck list down in the description below. Huge thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel. It means the world to me. If you want to support the channel and get access to exclusive posts and influence our content, you can go down in the description to see all of that. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a good one. I'll see you all very soon for another one of these deck techs, I'm sure, in the near future. And if not a deck tech, more ARKHAM content, and heck, more Marvel Champions content too. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.